When you get hurt at work, the government or the legislature has a Workers' Compensation Act to determine how much money you would be entitled to when you get hurt on the job. The determination of how much money you're entitled to typically is at the close of your case once all the issues are determined in your case as to how much medical care and treatment you required, if you were at maximum medical improvement, whether you're going to need further medical care and treatment, whether you return back to your former occupation, or whether you needed to be accommodated in a different job, vocationally retrained to a different job, or possibly maybe not being able to go back to work ever again. Once you get to the point where you know all these issues, then the issue of permanency is determined, or how much money you are entitled to under the law. Generally, permanency has two issues that are taken into an account after you get all that information to determine how much money you are entitled to. First, you would need to take your average weekly wage. And I'd just like to say that average weekly wage under the Workers' Compensation Act is not the same as your average weekly wage that you may find in your paycheck. Accordingly, to determine your proper average weekly wage under the law, you should seek the advice of counsel who practices in the field of workers' compensation. Once your average weekly wage is determined, typically that's multiplied by 60% to determine what's called your PPD rate or your permanent partial disability rate. So your permanent partial disability rate is 60% of your average weekly wage. That gets multiplied by a percentage of loss of use of your person. The body is divided up into a certain number of weeks depending on what body part is injured. So for example, an arm could be worth a certain number of weeks, a leg could be a certain number of weeks, an eye could be worth a certain number of weeks, and even if the eye is enucleated, it could be worth an additional number of weeks. Let's just say a body part is worth 10 weeks. Let's say somebody found that that body part had a loss of use of 10% loss of use of that body part. 10% of 10 weeks is 1 week, multiplied by your PPD rate, or 60% of your average weekly wage, and that would determine how much money you are entitled to. Understanding understanding the number of weeks for permanency a body part has, that is something that you could look up by statute. However, understanding the case law and the 100 years of trials that had occurred at the commission to determine what the percentage of loss of use is by somebody looking into the medical records, getting expert testimony, looking to see what your doctor states your permanent injury is, also having people potentially providing rating systems to determine what your wage is, your age, your occupation, what your future inabilities or abilities would be at work. All these are factors that would be taken into consideration by the arbitrator or by the commission to determine an award for you. This is an issue which I would state that you should see a professional or an attorney who practices in the field of workers' compensation to have a consultation to understand what your permanency rating is.